Here we are, the final tier list, the DPS tier list, the big pumper tier list, the most unhinged, the least meaningful tier list ever, okay? Very, almost arbitrary. But you know what? We're in this for the content, guys. We're in this together, and that's why I'm going to tell you a vague estimation of kind of how good things are in PvE for just general group content. A little bit, maybe, but yeah, this one's going to be a little bit scuffed. The most scuffed tier list, but look, you know, like all good things comes in threes, and that's why we've got to do this third tier list as well. So, let's talk about some damage builds. I would say you're going to be seeing a couple of new faces here, actually. Maybe a couple of surprises. The new weapon mastery has really helped out a couple of builds. And just in general, some balance changes have been favorable. But don't worry, we're going to have a lot of the old favorites. And let's start off with everyone's least favorite DPS spec. I feel like this spec gets more hate than anything else at this point. But yeah, we all know it's S tier. In fact, this is probably going to be S plus tier. I'm not going to rate anything below B tier, realistically. I don't think so. So we can kind of do it like this. Everything is really strong right now. Like, bear in mind, builds now are doing 45,000 DPS. So, yeah, even a build that's like, oh, only a pathetic 40k, that's still pretty insane. You can absolutely dominate with this stuff. But anyway, Virtuoso. I mean, come on. I think we've said this before. 1200 range, really good cleave, Mesmer utility, big DPS, incredibly tanky. I mean, you cannot beat it. You really can't. It's a resolute top spot there for our Virtuoso. Unsurprising. Wouldn't say it's necessarily always the best, and in fact, in a lot of situations, it's not actually going to be the top performer, but it's so reliable and so robust that it's never going to be a bad option. I think that's kind of the angle we're going to take with this tier list, by the way. I'm not going to be saying, oh yeah, these builds are optimal. Oh yeah, these are the best builds ever. It's kind of like, you're always going to get value out of these specs. Like, that's the way that we're going to approach this tier list. And Virtuoso is pretty much the king of that, except, actually, maybe for one exception. And that's right, Scourge, Condi Scourge, really loves the pistol weapon, of course. Doesn't really care about the sword too much, obviously. But yeah, condition damage Scourge, very similar to Virtuoso. It's a little tankier even. And actually, one change that actually it has ended up seeing some play actually on Cerus, in fact, this is showing you how powerful this can be, is Parasitic Contagion actually moved from the Grandmaster spot, so it doesn't compete with Lingering Curse anymore. So you can actually take Parasitic Contagion instead of Master of Corruption, which is a DPS loss, but it gives you pretty ridiculous sustain, actually. So you can go ahead and do that on a full DPS Scourge, and that's an option there as well. Kind of interesting. A little trait reshuffle really helped this build out in particular. It was actually a PvP-oriented swap. They moved Terror to Grandmaster, so you could take Path of Corruption and Terror. But that's another story. But yeah, really nice side effect there. Kind of cool build with a lot of options. And it's still got the good stuff. You've got the Scourge Portal. You've got Aegis now, too, of course, on this build. You've got Epidemic. You've got stability with the Snail Trail. You've got the Boon Corruption, the big AoE damage, the tankiness, the range, the revive power. You've got it all. This build's absolutely sick. And kind of on the more power build department, we're going to go ahead and slap Hollowsmith in here, and we're going to put Soul Beast. Yeah, no surprises there. Hollowsmith, though, now is absolutely pumping both power and Condi. It really is. Exceptionally good build. Both of these have a great damage profile. Pretty robust, too. They're medium classes, both with medium health, too. You are pretty tanky, massive damage, good cleave as well on this as well. Decent mobility on the Hollowsmith too is actually kind of nice, nice to have. Good CC, just all around. Like these are almost the power counterparts, I feel like, to Virtuoso and Scourge. Of course, you could play Power Virtuoso, and that's a build that is being. I think we are going to see some range power builds get pushed a little bit over time. Actually, we're going to get nudged in that direction. I think so. We might see some news there. Well, and of course, Power Harbinger, more on that later. But yeah, these are almost the counterparts of these. They're very good, they're very solid. Like, you're never gonna go like, oh boy, it really sucks that I'm playing Soul Beast or Hollow. That's not really gonna be the case. I think a bit of a brand new addition to this is actually going to be Willbender, and maybe even a surprise one. You know, let's do a double. Let's go ahead and put Tempest in here as well, because I really do think these two builds are also really good. Kind of continuing in the vein of tanky, very high DPS builds. Willbender's clocking in at 45,000 damage right now. This is the condition build, of course, and also has some very good durability. It's Guardian, right? So it's got some inherent tankiness to it, can heal itself really well, all that kind of good stuff. Good AoE. Too, though, with the Willbender. Really nice build overall. And a bit of a new addition, utilizing the pistol. And kind of a nice bonus. And I'm not really considering this in terms of this tier list, by the way. Very easy to play build as well, actually. This is like an actual button mash spec, and you just completely crank. So it's a nice bonus there for any of the Willbender fans out there, too. And power is decent as well. Like, you can 100% play power, too, but it's the condition build that really shines. And also Tempest as well. Ooh, that Elementalist pistol is doing some serious DPS. And Tempest, you've got to bear in mind, it is inherently very tanky as well. It's inherently a very tanky build, kind of across the board. It has that extra protection value, too. And this build does giga DPS as well. So yeah, Tempest, a brand new addition to the mix, and still can do some useful things as well, right? Like, you've got a bit of healing with your water overload access and wash the pain away. It is pretty damn good overall, actually. A classic, faithful build that is now risen to the upper echelons. Like, that's, you know, the Ellie mains, you know, that's what they like to see. You know, Ellie back on the top, perhaps where it deserves as well. So there we go. I almost feel like I might demote Tempest to S tier instead of S+, but we'll think about that as we continue. I think that this stuff is maybe a little bit of a cut above this, but we'll have to see. Maybe I just want to throw the Ellie mains a bone. Like, I know you guys want to be S+ tier. Like, they're like, oh, I want to do 50k DPS on my wizard. Like, oh, 50 wizards. Oh. But anyway, next, S tier. And this is where you're going to see, I think, a lot of the usual suspects. Like, the very good, very reliable, high DPS, and high utility, high value specs that aren't, like, outright broken. So basically, you're not going to see forum threads complaining about these. But let's just go ahead and slap them in no particular order. We've got Scrapper. Actually, screw that. Let's do a particular order. We're going to put, in my opinion, a bit of the trio. It is Scrapper, Reaper, and Vindicator. I think Spellbreaker as well. Like, these four, to me, are kind of the same, right? They are tanky, they have good damage, they bring some value to the group, right? You know, they've got good CC, good damage profiles, right? And they're all incredibly survivable. Scrapper's immortal with its barrier conversion. It can res people with function jar. You can do super speed. Reaper is giga tanky, giga CC, massive AoE damage. Vindicator can do stability, it can do reflects, great damage profile, good AoE, very durable build, has blocks baked into it. Spellbreaker is immortal with the defense trait line, has almost permanent stability, very, you know, CC is a bit awkward on this build, it's because it's rotational, but it makes up for that in my opinion. I think if you just play around it well, you'll be fine. It is a bit gimmicky on some bosses, but I don't know, like, you know, just don't play Conjured Amalgamate. Pretend that boss doesn't exist, and you're going to be fine. You know, these just work. You know, I like that comment from the chat. It just works. You know, they're functional builds. They're very good. Maybe a little understated. You know, not out there going crazy like some of this stuff, breaking the game, but they are exceptionally strong. And to be honest, I think this stuff and Scourge and Vert, oh man, like if you make a group out of this stuff, you're going to absolutely flatten everything, and you can probably be like, oh no, playing another game, maybe another 2 games on your third and monitors, right? It's going to be good. There we go. Next, we continue. Where should we go now? I actually want to put Power Harbinger in here as well. Power Harbinger, Giga tier. Okay, look at this build. This is actually a hype build. You know, I've always been a little bit anti the idea of trying to cram Power and Condi into Harbinger, but ANET said, you know what, we're going to do it anyway. And they very much succeeded. This build's really good. It's now one of the very few ranged power builds. Now, it does use swords, so not all of its damage is going to be ranged, but of course, it does have some of its damage output coming from ranged, which I think is pretty cool overall. And yeah, it's even got some self-healing on it. You're not worried about taking damage on Shroud and getting knocked out of Shroud, although I don't think that's a huge deal on Reaper. Reaper mains cry about that, but honestly, I mean, outside of Veil Guardian, it's not really a big deal in my opinion across the board. But yeah, very, very strong build now, actually. Brand new, guys. And of course, the Condi build is still pretty good. You know, it's still a very solid, very respectable Condi build as well, if you want to play that too, which can be, you know, pretty nice if you have that. And of course, if you gear Condi Harbinger, you've basically got Scourge ready to go as well, which is also pretty nice, I would say. Next up, let's slap a couple more things in here. I think Weaver is absolutely here in S tier. I think that, let's see, Berserker as well. Renegade, yeah, this build's good. The rework, I feel like, helped this build out as well. That instant CC is pretty crazy, honestly. And it's just one of those kind of reliable builds. Good range damage. It's tanky. It has a decent amount of group utility as well. That it can bring to the table, has some support capacity as well. It's a very nice build. It's going in S tier. Weaver, there's honestly not that much to say about it. It just does a lot of damage, and Power and Condi are both good. They both do really good DPS. It's reasonably durable. It can do CC pretty well. And that's kind of a similar thing with Berserker as well. Berserker just kind of blasts. It can do CC. It does big damage. It's Warrior, so it's tanky. Its heal skill's going to heal it to full constantly, right? It's just good, right? Overall, not much to say about that. And a lot of the rotational stuff did get cleaned up a lot. Like, a lot of the annoying crit capping stuff, a lot of the annoying Berserk management has been made significantly less frustrating to play around, I think, as well, recently. So that's also pretty good. And let's just kind of continue on. We're just going to march onwards on this tier list. We absolutely are. I'm going to slap Untamed in here as well. It's a big damage build, and again, I think this is where the tier list does start to kind of decay. It's quite difficult to compare a lot of these builds because they are somewhat situational, I think, actually, overall. But Untamed does big damage, okay? It kind of cranks. It's big DPS. Yeah, Nike doesn't like Untamed, but look, you know, the Untamed mains, they won me over. They're like, dude, you know, Untamed is good. Untamed is blasting, and it absolutely is. It is a pumper build, okay? It is a pumper build at this point, okay? You know, I bought the Copium. I bought the Copium, guys. Let's do this with Untamed. I absolutely did. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna, you know, let's get Mirage out of the way. While I catch my breath, let's get Mirage out of the way. I'm just gonna go ahead and put it in what even is this tier? You know, like they need to figure out what they're doing with this. You know, I don't know what's going on there with Mirage, but it's cursed, right? Like it's scuffed tier, in my opinion. And let's work up from the bottom here a little bit as well. I think it's going to be Herald and Mech. These builds are actually kind of cool, but I think that because of how powerful supports are right now, particularly with Herald, and Herald suffered, it lost a lot of DPS kind of for the sins of Power Herald, unfortunately. Quickness Herald, that is. So this build kind of fell by the wayside, quite sadly. So yeah, it provides boons, but honestly, nobody cares these days because we've got boons coming out our eyeballs. So that's not a big deal. And Mech just isn't good, right? I hate to say it, you know, it's a meme build that you can play. I don't even, you know what, hot take, I don't even like DPS Mech. I don't like how the Mech attack abilities work. They feel really bad to me. I've never liked it. I much prefer Power or Lack Mech. I don't like using the Mech on the DPS build. It's annoying too because it's ranged and you have to keep pulling it in so it gets the buff. It's like, it's not good, okay? I don't like it and it makes me sad. There we go. I said it. Maybe one day it can return. And yeah, Condi Mech is a thing, but it's like, whatever. Honestly, I mean, I don't know. Like, you could argue that Condi Mech deserves to be an A tier. And actually it does. It's better than Herald. Just because of Condi Mech, Mech gets into A tier. But Power Mech is scuffed as hell. It really is. And let's see if we can kind of just quick fire get all of this stuff done. Okay, let's see. Does most of this go into A tier? Condi Firebrand does. It's actually a very respectable build. I think it's... people don't really play this build that much, but it's good. And mostly it's kind of... It loses to Condi Willbender, right? Like, people play... People play Willbender instead of Firebrand. That's like the main thing there, I would say. But it's still decent. It's just utility has been very cheapened by the fact that supports are so good, and you don't really need the utility this build provides most of the time, I think. To be perfectly honest with you, it's not that impressive. Spectre, it's a perfectly good build. Lacks Cleave, has amazing CC, and that's like a real strength of this build, actually. But the single target nature of it, it's okay. It's damage. I don't think it's anything to kind of write home about too much as well. But yeah, it's kind of sitting there. Catalyst, I mean, I don't really perceive Catalyst to be as good as the other LE specs. It does do a lot of damage, to be honest, but it's pretty cursed in terms of the utility it can provide to the group, to be honest with you. I don't think it's that good. Catalyst is out of there, okay? It's cleansed. Okay? Cleansed from the situation. I think Chronomancer's in here as well. It's not a bad build, and in the right hands you can do a lot of damage, but it's fairly limited value, I think. It's kind of one of those things like, why are you not playing Virtuoso? Or why are you not playing Power Quickness Chronomancer instead? Like, you know, why would you do that? Why would you inflict that on your team? Okay, you know, do you hate them? Do you not like them? Do you want them to suffer? Well, I mean, maybe you do. Next, Bladesworn. Bladesworn is A tier. This is kind of a weird one. Like, it's hard to rate this. It's really hard to rate Bladesworn because this is a build that is very dependent on the group that you're in. And that arguably means it should be rated a lot lower. Nike is calling for question mark tier, and he's not actually wrong here. Like, this is a build that can really shine in the right group with the right players. But on its own, in pugs and stuff, it's probably going to be a little bit sus, unless you really know what you're doing and it goes relatively smoothly. Like, if things don't go well for you, this build will probably not work out for you there as well. It's a little bit unfortunate. But it is what it is. That's how it goes, my friends. In that regard. But thing is, it does so much damage, it would feel bad there. Oh, man. I don't know how to rate this, to be honest. Like, I don't know where to put Bladesworn. I'm going to put it in A tier, so that the warrior mains can't complain about their spec being bad. Daredevil is going in A tier as well. It's not exceptional. It's nothing to write home about. Like, Cat does have good CC, obviously. Its damage is okay. Like, Power Daredevil got improved significantly, actually. It's up to, like, 41,000 DPS or something like that these days. But 41k? That's not good enough anymore, guys. 41k is noob. You gotta be doing 44k, 45k if you want to be an actual real build. Get out of here, guys. Okay, that's, what you gotta do. Okay. Next. Deadeye. Man, I'm still not... Actually, wait, no, not Deadeye. Let's do this other... This stuff's easy. Dragon Hunter. Yeah, it's A tier. It's a little bit like... I feel like it's a bit like scuffed Willbender these days. Like, that's where I see Dragon Hunter. I think it could have... I do like the niche they're trying to carve out for it, having some cool defensive utility with the F skills. But I think they need to lean into that a little bit more in order to make that work. I think. And there have been some, like, pretty cool quality of life changes to the amount of animation locking that happens on a lot of Guardian builds. But I think it needs, you know, they need to lean into it a little bit more. But that's how it is. I do know about Condi Daredevil, but Condi Daredevil is like a... How are you getting value out of that in most situations? Like, yeah, if you're doing, like, some crazy Giga Blaster runs, then Condi Daredevil is good. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, this is actually... Dragon Hunter is a fractal build, guys. This is the build that you do to one-shot fractal bosses. Actually true as well. That actually is true. And let's see. Condi Druid. I think this is a very solid A-tier build as well. You know, it works. It does big DPS. But I don't think it really has the solidity, the value of the S-tier builds. And that's why it languishes in a pathetic A-tier. Okay, that's what's going on here. That's, you know... But it's cool that it exists. You know, one of the reasons why this tier list is so difficult to do is because there are so many really good builds, right? It's very hard to rate them. Like, they're all everything is surprisingly close together. The game is pretty well balanced right now, in my opinion. overall. Kind of, anyway. It's difficult to distinguish things because it is so situational. This is why this is my least favorite tier list to do, because it is so situational. Like, stuff like supports are way less situational than DPS builds. Like, whereas the DPS builds, I think it's so dependent on like the experience level of the group you're in, like the damage of players around you, right? And just like the encounter in general. It's very difficult to rate all of this stuff, I think. Yeah. And as for Deadeye, I'm pretty sure it kind of has to go in S tier. I think. Maybe, I mean, yeah, it probably does, I think. I think it does have to go in S tier. Because at the end of the day, it is giga damage. It's blasting with the Condi Axe build, the power build. Quality of life got changed a lot. In particular, all of the have 90% health stuff to get your crit chance and to get their extra damage. All of that got made way easier to deal with, actually. And set down to 50%, right? So it's really easy to maintain all those buffs, get your crit chance, right? Good quality of life to how the mark works as well. So you don't get trolled nearly as hard by things going on. Like, Deadeye got screwed over a lot by mechanics happening. ArenaNet's taken a lot of steps to prevent that from happening nearly as much, which is obviously really beneficial to the build. It is still a little bit on the lower utility end, I would say, of damage builds. But again, you know, like, it's always going to be a sliding scale, right? Like, you have giga damage, like lower utility. You can't say a build isn't good purely because it doesn't have utility, especially when a lot of utility is always going to be covered by your supports anyway. Right, I would say, in that regard. I'm really tempted to demote Tempest here now at the end, mostly to annoy the Elementalist mains, because you know, that's my only joy left in this game. But it is rather good, actually, so I feel like it does deserve to be there, actually. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, the rifle pierce is also nice. I forgot to mention that, but yeah, there's a lot of really good quality of life they added to Deadeye. But you know what? I just don't want to look. I admit it, guys. I don't want to see any Elementalist builds in S+. If I had it my way, it would look like this. I wish it was like this, guys. I do. I do. Just so they cry about it, right? Like, no, it should be like that. Like, needs a rework. Just, you know, cleanse it from all existence. But we're not going to do, we're not going to do that for that reason. And there you go. That is basically going to be our beautiful DPS tier list. Incredible stuff. You love to see it. I will actually highlight a few points of contention, because I did see some good points in the chat from good players. You could definitely make the argument that Vindicator deserves to be an S+ tier. It is one of the builds that I do really like, and thinking about it, I am kind of inclined to agree with that position, actually. It is a pretty insanely good build, like particularly because of the burst damage it can provide to the table, and I do love the flexibility that it has, actually. Like, the fact that it can be a really nice soft carry as a DPS build, it does make it really exciting to play. It has a lot of soft carry potential, I think, overall, in these situations. So that is nice. That's definitely debatable there as well. I would say Tempest is debatable. You could swap Tempest and Vindicator. I'm pretty hyped about the Condi Tempest build, though, actually. I think it's really, really good. I tend to like builds that have this kind of tankiness to them and are ranged as well. I think ranged tanky builds, who'd have thunk it? They're pretty damn good. They absolutely are. And that is that is exactly what a lot of these builds can bring to the table, is having that range potential. With some exceptions, obviously, but like the range stuff makes it really good, because that just allows you to continue to perform well no matter what's going on, right? Like, it's that lack of situationalness that ranged DPS can bring to the table is really fun, I think, there as well. Yeah, but other than that, again, to be clear, I want to reiterate this. This is the most scuffed tier list, but I love content, and tier lists are content. I like reading the comments. I like watching people argue over this, and therefore I'm doing it anyway. You should go and watch the other tier lists for offensive supports and defensive supports. They are better and more useful. But this one is useful for entertainment, okay? Oh, yeah. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what I'm doing this for. I'm here to entertain you. And then you can entertain yourselves in the comments section. You love to see it. But anyway, that's going to about do it. And honestly, what a state of things, guys. The only build that I think is a little bit cursed, well, Power Mechanist and Power Herald, DPS Herald, everything else is kind of a sick build. There are some issues with quality of life, I think, and, you know, some builds need to be fleshed out a bit and have their niche. They need to have their time to shine. That's kind of what you see in A tier, right? In A tier, I felt like a lot of these builds just don't have a special thing that they do. Like, Thief used to with all the stolen skills. It got propped up in raids, right? Or with Daredevil. But I feel like it doesn't really have that nearly as much anymore. And yes, the Conde Daredevil does exist. It has that niche. But I feel like it just doesn't have something that it can really shine in. And I feel that about a lot of this stuff, actually. Like, these builds, they're really good and you can do well on them, you can do damage really well, all that kind of good stuff, but they don't really have the thing where they can excel, right? Whereas I feel like the S Plus and S builds, they all have something that they're really exceptional at, and they have a special thing, right? You know, you've got the barrier of the Scrapper, the range power DPS of Harbinger, the stability access of the Spellbreaker, the niche, you know, the utility of the Vindicator, right? Like the insane tankiness and AoE potential of Reaper, right? We can go on, right? They have their exceptional qualities that these builds have. The mega DPS of the Deadeye, the incredible burst damage of Power Weaver, and just very high DPS of Weaver in general, while being pretty durable and reliable damaging build, right? Like with good cleave and good CC, right? Like that, these builds like have their excellence, whereas I think A tier is lacking that a little bit. They don't have their special sauce that they have, and Bladethorn is just like a little bit too niche, I would say, overall in like where it can truly shine, actually. In that regard. But anyway, that's kind of my take on the state of things. Oh, yeah, I will mention Power Mirage. ANET want to make Power Mirage. So Mirage mains, dry your tears, pick yourselves up, dust yourselves off, put on your pants, okay? Because good news, ANET wants to make Power Mirage a thing. They didn't succeed this time around. They buffed the hell out of the sword and greatsword ambushes, but apparently the damage, it still sucks. But good news, couple more patches down the line, and I'm 100% sure that ANET going to be on that. So stay tuned for the Power Mirage Redemption arc, which could be really exciting, by the way, because Power Mirage has good AoE. People use Power Greatsword like to tag mobs and farm Labyrinth, right? So there's actually some pretty cool potential there with the Greatsword. Not a fan of the forced movement, to be honest with you. Like the sword leaping around is going to be a bit not good, to be honest, but we'll see. We'll see how that one turns out. You know, we absolutely will. You know, like, yeah, the Mirage Redemption arc is coming. But there you have it, my friends. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this tier list. Be sure to... Don't tell me why I'm wrong. Find a comment, leave a comment, and then find someone else's comment and tell them why they're wrong. Okay, there we go. Like, leave me out of this. I'm ducking for cover right now, okay? I don't want to get caught in the crossfire. But anyway... I have entertained you. You know I have to entertain me in the comment section. And of course, go watch the other tier lists. Don't take them too seriously. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed them. Like, comment, subscribe. Go on Patreon. Support the channel. Join the channel. Watch the stream on Twitch. Subscribe on YouTube. Okay? Come back and watch every day. Watch every other video. Enjoy this prolonged outro. But that's it for now. I'm out of here. I'm done. Good game, gamers. I'm out of here. I'll see you next time.